Front Row MMA, we're here at UFC Fight Night 30 in Manchester, and we're really grateful that you guys would be willing to give up a little bit of time. I'm honored. The thing, we know you're a journalist, and you've been a journalist involved in the combat sports for a long, long time, and I think a lot of the people that have just sort of discovered the UFC and beyond the octagon perhaps don't know much about your past, which is what I'd like to talk about first.
Highly criminal.
Boxing, I think, was the first. Where did that love appear from, and how did you get involved?
Well, that's a long, long way back. When Sports Night was on, and it was on a Wednesday night, boxing was always the last thing they showed, and I'm talking 1973, 74, and on Sports Night, it was, Wednesday was a sports day when I was a little kid, and I remember I used to beg my dad if I could stay up, because it was the last thing on, Watershed and all that kind of thing. So I just loved boxing at that age, and when I was 10 I started doing judo, and I always loved action movies. I always loved Bruce Lee. I had a Bruce Lee poster in my room. I loved the idea of I love Bruce Lee because not only was he small, fearless, could fight, but he had real ethics.
Yeah.
And he thought he was a bit of a lover as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There was always that moment where he brought out the rose or the lotus flower, or and he'd be with the girl looking over the wall, or and I just think it's a bit like if you throw it forward to today. A lot of these guys we were around in fight sports have superhero qualities about them. There's something different about them. They have something in them that it's not necessarily we want it, but we admire it as men, and we admire it when we admire the women as men, the way they go out there and do battle. So, I did judo. I was always interested in martial arts. I played rugby and cricket myself. I went to public school, and that was the thing. But I remember we used to do nunchucks. We used to do just into all of that stuff. And then when I was at university, I went off to China for a year, and I learned wushu with a kun, which is a stick, and I did qigong, breathing exercises. Always into kind of like energy, force, and how you use it. In that sense, I wanted to be a professional sportsman. I wanted to play cricket or rugby. I think I got the next best thing. Maybe it's even better. Did languages, travelled around the world, did an MA in linguistics and journalism, started working in sports journalism. I've done a lot of different things. I reported on Tiananmen Square years ago when that was going on. That was when I was in China. I've travelled around doing all sorts of things. So really, people often say, God, I wish I had his job. He's so lucky. I haven't got a job. It developed organically. Yeah. You know that. Yeah. What happens is, through your life, you develop a role. And it's all just come about organically, I covered boxing from the start for the Telegraph, amongst school sports, Paralympics, rugby. I've done all those kind of things, and 7 or 8 years ago, I just, I'd watched MMA from afar. I didn't really know it well, but I got the opportunity to spend a week around some fighters, and I just thought straight away, these are amazing guys. These stories, just amazing. I need to tell these stories. This sport, I can't believe that we aren't covering this.
Did you have any preconceived ideas about what MMA was like before you started to watch?
Because I love violence. I love sporting violence. I love it. I've always loved it. I love collisions. I love, I like batsmen being hit by cricket balls. I like massive tackles in rugby. I love it when the crowd erupts when a centre's hit by a flanker and the ball spills. I loved Ward and Gatti and Tyson and Lennox Lewis when he went in for the kill. The Eubank Banks, Ben, Watson, Collins era. I loved all that.
I think it's fair to say that some sort of perhaps I don't know if purist is the right word, but they certainly were. You had famous promoters coming out and saying that this isn't a sport and blah, blah. Did you take any grief from any of your colleagues?
All the time.
And how did you react to that? What kind of things were they?
I just told them they're fucking myopic. Sorry, they are. It really, it's something that still irritates me intensely. That there's several guys in the British media who I actually really respect. I'm talking chief sports writer level, and there's a few of them that have come along. John Dillon came along there. He's a very respected sports writer from the Express, the chief sports writer. He came along one night, and he's got teenage sons, and he's going, my sons are really into this. I sat with him at the London event, Barrow and who was it? Barrow McDonald, sorry, time passes. Barrow McDonald, and I talked to him through that event. You know, he was asking me about things, about the videos, and he was brilliant. He really got it.
Yeah.
But other guys who are really decorated in the British sports journalism landscape, frankly myopic. I think there's an element of you can actually find out whether people's eyes are open or not with MMA and when they've been covering other sports, because I think there's a feeling that, you know, if you've never gone to golf, right, and you're watching a little white ball being knocked around the field in long walks, you can't go once and go, oh God, this is shit. It's not, there's an art to it. It's a challenge against yourself as much as against the other person. You can't go to one golf event and go, nah, never going to that again. That's not a sport. And I think I've had that from several guys, and I'm talking the leading lights, and that disappoints me. The other side of it is, you know, I always joke with the boxing crew, oh yeah, you know, you're missing out, but I might have gone over to the dark side in your eyes, but you're missing out, and I think, I tell them they're missing out professionally, because there's a great product there to write about. As I said, great stories, compelling people, a great community, amazing access, fantastic fans, you know, fantastic fans, and an opportunity to pioneer. And that's what I'm enjoying as well, pioneering some of this stuff. You know?
Well, it's funny you should say it, because I think it's fair to say, and this is going to sound totally kiss ass, so everybody else can fuck off, that you're the face of so certainly UK MMA to a global audience. Especially, you know, when we look at the UFC, you're the guy who's introduced a lot of the Americans through ESPN to sort of the British fighters, the British stories. I think you probably can take credit for the smashes.
No, I don't credit for it, but I definitely come up with the name. I definitely did come up with the name because I was sitting there with Marshall Zelaznik and Ant Evans, who, you know, Ant Evans used to be the head of PR at the office in London, and obviously Marshall, you know, head of international affairs now, state office, and you know, I'm a big cricket guy, and I just said to Marshall, if you're doing UK versus, you know, it's England versus Australia, if you're doing UK against Australia, the smashes, you've got to do it, you know. And he was like, yeah, I like that, and yeah, that was just fun. But I don't. What I would say is, because that's an interesting thing you raise about, you know, I'm the face in journalism, if you like, of UK MMA, because in many ways I'm not of UK MMA, and I think I'm going to stick about that.
Yeah, well, I'll ask about that in a little bit.
Well, it's I think what it is the fact that I was probably the first person in the mainstream UK national media to come over and to really embrace it. Some of the other guys are about it. Jeff Powell from the Manager, and you know, Kevin Francis from the Star writes a column. But I think I've really embraced it and really kind of thought, I'm going to stick with this till it's genuinely mainstream, till it's genuinely understood and genuinely accepted by my colleagues in the mainstream media, by sports editors, so that we put the sport on the map. And I think in that sense, I just happen to have been the guy who's, you know, handsome. I don't know, who's modest. No. The guy who's a freak, sits on the end of the row. No, I think I've got a passion for it, and I think, you know, I've always done a bit of TV and a bit of radio and a bit of punditry, but there has a role has developed. It's taken over quite a lot of my time, but I'm very happy to do it because I believe in it. That's the bottom line. Yeah. I cover Paralympics. I've covered Paralympics for 20 years. It's exactly the same thing for me. Yeah. It's not exactly the same thing because they're not fighting no arms and legs, but here's something amazing. It's worth being aware of this. It's worth knowing about these people because they're actually fucking amazing. Yeah. And if you're not into fight sports or you're not into Paralympics, just tune into these people for a little bit because you'll learn something from them. Right.
We were talking about the fact that perhaps the sport's been around 20 years. You've been involved in it 7 or 8 at least. And I think the criticism that comes from some of the UK media is that you don't know a lot about perhaps the grassroots UK MMA.
I know what grassroots is,
but it also seems to me that that's something that's a knowledge base of yours that's continuing to develop because you're spotting new talent and you're talking about. So do you ever, not necessarily to them, but what do you think of that? To those people that are saying, well, he shouldn't be doing UFC because he doesn't know UK MMA. My argument is he should be doing UFC because he's bringing UK MMA to life.
Well, all right, here's the real thing. What does it matter what they think? It's not up to them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a weird argument because the thing is this. It's exactly the same in America. You've got probably 2 massive organisations and everyone else.
Yeah.
And everyone else, the objective of every fighter is not to fight in UK MMA, it's to fight in the UFC. And it's a bit like, newspaper journalism is declining. I am really stretched in my work, like I said to you before, people say, God, I wish I had your job. My job's developed organically, I've got contracts with the Telegraph, I work for them, I work for other people, I've always been what's called a retainer contract, so I do certain things for them. But you go out there and you make your own role, and also, I've done journalism a long time. I've been a journalist for 21 years next year, and people forget that, and I think there are plans on UFC Beyond the Octagon to do a regular section on local grassroots MMA in the UK. I'm very involved in the planning of these shows. We're already planning to do that. We might be sending out James Haskell, who goes and works in the fighter at the moment, out to different MMA clubs around the country to meet the guys, to go into the community. And the way I equate this is, one of my colleagues, Henry Winter, who's the football correspondent, he will cover the Champions League, he'll cover the World Cup, he'll do the Premier League, but he's got 5 other guys, 7 other guys, 10 other guys that do other Premier League games, Division 1, Division 2, the FA Cup, the Vars. You can't do all those things. I genuinely have not got enough time in the day to do it all.
Yeah.
So I think as it develops, hopefully, and as it becomes bigger and as it becomes more understood in the mainstream, there will be the opportunity to have another guy who goes out there and we've got our British scene guy.
Yeah.
It's not a kind of snootiness or anything like that, or that's not worthy. I cover school sports still.
Yeah.
I covered Paralympics when no one gave monkeys about it. It's purely based on I can only do so much myself. And the thing is, if I've very little time off as it is, I haven't got time to go to. I can't open up that channel at the moment. It's not that I'm not aware of it. It's not that I'm not talking about it. It's not that I don't have guys I talk to. John Joe O'Regan is very much a scene guy. Fighters Only's online editor. I've got a lot of friends in the MMA community, and the thing is, because what happens in fight sports, they're different organisations.
Yeah.
There's always a rivalry.
Yes.
I have to get on with 8 boxing promoters around the world, and you can probably only bag each of them once a year.
Yeah.
You can bag them in one story, and then they don't speak to you for a few months. But I've got eyes on it, but I just simply don't have time to cover it at the moment. So I'm just kind of hoping to cover the top level, and then that filters down, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, this has probably been a tough. We're going to move away from sort of the politicky side of it.
Yeah,
let's
politics.
Exactly. Let's talk about the fight. You've had the opportunity to be cage side for some of the best fights the UFC have put on. But if I were to ask you for a top three, not necessarily. I
always struggle with these.
And personally, not necessarily from everyone thought, but fights that or moments that you've gone, oh man, this is why I do this.
I always struggle with these, but right now, I was at Jones Gustafsson in Toronto, and it was so good. I didn't want to watch it on TV back.
Right.
You know when you've watched it live, you only get a chance to see something live once, and I barely touched the keyboard. I barely looked down for that fight because it was just so compelling. Gustafsson delivered so much more than many of us expected he would.
Yeah.
And I think many of us didn't expect him to deliver quite that much and give Jones a beating even though he lost.
Yeah.
That fight looms large. I really enjoyed Anderson Silva Chael Sonnen 1.
Yes.
Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. I was willing Chael to get good. There was a feeling that something was ebbing away in him during that fight.
Yeah.
He'd thrown so many shots. He'd thrown so many shots. It was almost like when he punches, it's the equivalent of not being able to finish a plate of chips.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because there was something about that fight where you just thought, in a minute, you can't put Anderson away. You had him down on his back. Kind of Chael's version of ground and pound.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Kind of sloppy, slippery.
Always moving, always landing something. Never
really definitive.
Yeah.
But amazing guy. He's one of my favourites, by the way. I really like the guy. And the third one. See, I was at Diego Sanchez Gil Melendez last week.
Sorry for something.
But Cain and Dos Santos. Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos. I have to roll. They're all fairly recent, but I'd have to roll those three out right now. But UFC 100 was amazing.
Yeah.
Just a whole
St. Pierre. That was
Bisping. I'm looking at my shoulder in case Mike's around.
It's St. Pierre and Alves, wasn't it?
St. Pierre and Alves, Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir.
Yeah.
Just an amazing event, an amazing fan expo. They're all great though. Do you know? I mean, even the UK cards, people say, "Oh God, 9 Brits," and
Brazilians don't say that, do they? The Brazilians don't say that about their cards.
They just want to win. They just want 9 Brazilians to win. That's all.
Canadians don't tend to say that about their cards. It just seems to be, unless we get Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre in a super fight, we're not quite as happy as we should be.
I think, Steve, there's something different there, and that's time zone. They can get a pay-per-view that we can't get. They can. But I do understand that down the line they might be rolling out. This way, they're so Machiavellian in a good way. They might be rolling out a Brazil event, a UK event, a Brazil event, and a US event all in one night. So you do a 12-hour pay-per-view. Can you imagine that? So they want to bring it all together in this huge event. So you record it all, and you break it down, you watch what fights you want. They're thinking all the time about how to bring the time zones together, because it's the only thing at the moment that the UFC is doing and not doing that they could really manage more. And here's the other thing. Let me just go back to the UK scene a minute. No one, and I know that UC MMA do their thing, and they've got their own style, and they're very there's a WWE element to them, they're very showy. I know Bama takes itself very seriously and puts on really good shows and trying to get big crowds, and I know Cage Warriors is very professional, and they're totally professional, and they're trying to attract bigger audiences, and they're going European and beyond, Middle East. But the thing is, none of those organisations has the clout to turn this into a global sport in the way that these guys are doing. And I think that's what I've noticed. There's real money where their mouth is. There's money where Dana White is. There's money where Lorenzo Fertitta is. when Lorenzo Fertitta was over a couple of weeks ago, it was self-evident that he was here at a sporting conference, speaking at the highest level with a lot of people, just wanting to develop this push into this frontier, into our zone. And, they genuinely have got clout. You don't have clout. They are running all their TV shows. I've worked involved, part of it. It's a massive operation, massive. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've got to get behind them.
Yes.
Because it's just going to drive us forward.
I have one last question for you, Gareth, and then I know we're going to let you go. You've been busy man today. The sheer number of people that within the sport that you've met. Which one of them?
Choose one.
Oh, you can give me a couple. The ones that surprised you, the ones that made you, the ones that you learned most about. Who impresses you most? Whose story is it that intrigued you most? And
story?
Yeah.
Well, certainly as a person, Chael Sonnen is pretty amazing. I mean, he's got I think he'll have his own chat show, which will be stars and celebrities and politicians. And the first time I ever spoke to Chael, I hope he doesn't mind me telling you this, was a 3-hour conversation on the phone. First time I properly spoke to him. I'd covered events that he was in, and I'd interviewed him at events just with a group of people in the scrum. And I was doing a cover story for Fighters Only magazine, and it was around the time when he had the TRT issue, and he had and he'd had the kind of white collar crime, if you like, with the auditing of his stuff. And I was in here actually. I was right next door in the apartment. I was covering a boxing match, and it was Friday night interview. It was set up for 11 o'clock at night here at our time. He was over in the US, and we just spoke for 3 hours on the phone. The first hour was him just talking about how down he was about people not ringing him with their own stories, and about the MMA media, and how could it take itself seriously? It was just writing these stories, and you know how stories go viral sometimes. And I try to be careful. I made some howlers actually. I try to be careful about just following a viral story on the internet. And a story's a story. Don't get me wrong. I'm in journalism. A story's a story, but. He was saying that no one had contacted him. I had to turn the dictaphone off because literally for an hour, he was just talking about himself, and I know he always talks about himself, but he was just talking about how he was being misrepresented in so many ways. It was interesting, and he's a really good guy because he's so intelligent on a lot of different levels. But then I learned about him, and this is why I really like him, what a giver he is. I learned that through Luke Barnett. I learned that through Jimmy Quinlan. I learned that through guys who've been around him who say, John Maguire. He lent John Maguire his truck. Yeah. Who'd lend John Maguire their truck? Certainly not me. What do you think happened to the truck?
Oh, tell me it came back all right.
It got totaled, of course.
Oh, no. There'd have been Krispy Kreme boxes in the back for sure, Mr. Maguire. I know.
but he's great. I like some of the enigmas. Anderson Silva's an enigma for me. I really like the guy. When I speak Spanish or Portuguese, and I try and kind of, when I've had interviews with him, just have a chat with them. Portuguese and Spanish obviously understand themselves, in terms of language. And I find him very enigmatic, and I love the characters who are Chris Lieben. I love Chris. I really really like him.
Is there anybody whose name on the sheet you see, and I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but you go, got my work cut out for me here. Is there any of them? Yeah?
No. He didn't talk to me for 9 months when I wrote that he'd been outclassed by Dan Henderson. He said, but Mike's a very emotional character. I really hope he comes back from this eye problem.
Man,
he's a large. I love the fact he went from. I'm not going to use this expression because it's just too rude. But he went from kind of heel, to poster boy to heel to villain to kind of lovable rogue in America. Yeah. He's had this whole transition over a series of characters. There's so many. I do enjoy the larger-than-life characters. Conor McGregor's just come along, and he's one of them. John Jones is interesting. I'd like to get to know him more. I'd like to get behind the mask of Cain Velasquez.
Yeah. Is that part of the joy of what you do?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, of course it is. The why, the where, the how, the when. Why? Where does it come from in them? You know, and we know. You know, if you're a father, you know, you're a father.
Yeah.
You're a father. You've thought about your children at some point and what you do to someone. You know, you take yourself to that place, to the oblivion moment. Yeah, where you give yourself to destruction, to oblivion, because you really fucking believe in that thing. You're not gonna be halted because you believe in what you're doing because it's the right thing. That's what I love about these guys. They've got that in them. They've controlled the aggression or insecurity in some people, the violence. They've controlled it, made it into an art form, made it into a sport, and then when they go in, like Jimmy Manuel now says, you know, I'm just ready to flip the switch and unleash the beast. And it's for our pleasure, and they know they're there to entertain. And it's brilliant. It's just brilliant.
It is the best. It's one of the greatest sports.
And that's, I admire that.
Yeah.
And I admire the work ethic when you learn about it, you know, when you learn about it. And, you know, it's brilliant. It's just brilliant.
Gareth, I so appreciate your time. We've taken far more of it we intended to. But before we let you go, we always ask the fighters this. We always ask the referees if you enter. Is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to or thank you to for supporting you on your way or making your life a little bit easier?
Yeah, I mean, literally, everyone, you know, meeting fans is brilliant. I think, you know, people like yourselves, you know, I mean, you're really cool to me. I mean, no, but the thing is, we do need more mainstream media, and if we aren't going to get the mainstream media, we need guys who love the sport, who are dedicated to it, and are going to put it out on platforms like yours. And, you know, it's, you know, thank you. I mean, it's a big sport. It will only continue to grow. It's brilliant, but it's kind of jagged and a bit raw at the edges. Yes. This is going to be the fun part over the next 10 to 15 years, pioneering it into the mainstream. Because once it's in the mainstream, it might be more rounded, more regulated, more gym rats, less characters. Yeah. I think this could be the great time right now, you know. Yeah. So the shout out really is to everyone. Everyone that is helpful towards me, you know, and I think it's most of all it's the fans for being so brilliant. I mean, really, genuinely and truly, the fans in this sport, the true fans in this sport, not the Twitter warriors and the internet warriors, the true fans in the sport are just incredible, and so are the fighters. Yeah. There's very, very few fighters. In fact, I can't think of any. Who I would say, oh God, I can't be bothered dealing with him today. Just amazing.
Gareth, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to have met you. Thanks, and have a good show tonight. Thank you.